All right, guys. So we're gonna get started. This is the Salt Lake Community Network meeting. Just a reminder: in December we're not going to meet, and then we'll meet again in January. Maybe we'll talk about the upcoming legislative session. I'm going to turn the time over to Katie first to talk about ACE grants or ACE funding. Go ahead, Katie.
Sure. Thanks, Landon. I'm Katie. I think I've met most everyone on this call, I believe. Also, can everyone hear me okay? My screen is getting a little blocky. Okay, great. My name is Katie Schnell. I'm actually Weston Clark's executive assistant here in the mayor's office. So I email with a lot of you quite often, and thanks to everyone that came to the lunch earlier this week. It's good to see everybody there too. But also under my umbrella here is the ACE Fund, which is the Arts, Culture, and Events Fund that's out of the mayor's office. So I'll just talk for a couple of minutes about that. But basically what it is we have a pool of money. We have $200,000 that we give away to individuals and organizations hosting community and neighborhood events throughout Salt Lake City throughout the year. Common misconception: we only fund summer events. It is not true. We fund events throughout the whole year. So don't shy away from applying. If you have an event in the fall or winter or spring, we can work with you on that as well. But basically how it's organized is we have two different tiers. We have tier one, which is $5,000 to $10,000 grants. Those are for events that have been going on for 3 years or more. It's a bit of a competitive process for that higher tier. We ask people to submit a budget in the application. We really want to see how your event has been successful in the past and who it's serving. And those ones it's just a bigger chunk of money. So we want to ensure that it's being used properly. But we also have tier two funding, which is $500 to $4,999. So just below that $5,000. And that is for new and upcoming events. Your event doesn't have to be going on for a certain amount of years. It doesn't have to be a certain size. We don't ask for a budget in your application because we understand that for a new event, you might be just figuring it out and you might not exactly know how things are going to work. So that's for events that are, just trying to get off the ground and things like that. But other details on that, eligibility requirements, I would say the biggest factor is that it takes place within Salt Lake City limits. A lot of people get that confused with Salt Lake County or dipping down into Mill Creek, South Salt Lake. We love our neighbors, but it has to be in Salt Lake City boundaries. The organization or person hosting the event can live or be based outside of the city limits, but your actual event needs to take place within the city. And another important thing to note is it doesn't have to be an organization applying. An individual can apply. We understand that not everybody has an LLC or a 501c3 or be a part of something organized. Anybody can throw an event. We look for big and small events, as we kind of talked about with the tiers. So don't shy away from that either. Anybody can apply. We want to see things that align with the mayor's principles and things like that. So those are all posted online too. Basic factors are just, we want to see something that's promoting community, that's promoting economic development. We value sustainability and accessibility, not only accessibility in an ADA sort of fashion, but also is there public transit available to get to your event? If it costs an amount of money for a ticket, do you have discounts available? Accessibility pieces like that. Language is another one. We also really value cultural events, promoting just the culture of our city and showcasing the just diverse group of people that live here. We look for things like that as well. But I know I only have a couple of minutes to talk, so I don't want to throw too much information at you, but I will be sure to share our ACE website with this group of people as well, so that you can take a look there. We have more details on the application questions, the eligibility requirements. You can really get in the weeds on that. We have a whole document about it. But I think the biggest thing is the applications are now open and you have until December 13th to apply. So about a month left to submit your application. We also have public information sessions. Oh, thank you, Weston. I appreciate it. In the chat, we've got the link. Awesome. We do have public information sessions to share information about this grant as well. We have our next one on Monday over at Neighborhood House on the west side. And then the last one will be November 29th. That's a Tuesday after Thanksgiving. And that's going to be right down here across the street at the public library main branch. So a little more centrally located for that one. So if you are applying for the grant, you start the process, you find you have questions, please reach out to me. Feel free to pop by one of those information sessions as well. And also, if you wouldn't mind just helping spread the word about the grant, that would be really, really great. If you know other people that might benefit from this or be interested in it, please don't shy away from sharing that information with them too. So yeah, and the applications are all online as well. They're linked there too. So I think that is a quick rundown of things. Ashley, Weston, did I miss anything? Do you have anything to add? Or does anyone have any questions?
I would just like to add that I had the pleasure of attending one of Katie's workshop sessions that is on the outreach flyer, and I will say it's a grand old time. So I highly suggest anyone from your community to attend. It's a good time, and Katie does a great job of explaining the process.
Hey, Ashley, can you introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. Yes.
All right.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
Good to see you again. Hey, Jan. Hi, Miss Short. Good to see you. My name is Ashley Cleveland. I'm the Deputy Director of Community Outreach. And what falls under my umbrella of work, in addition to assisting Weston and our liaison team, is our boards and commissions. So hopefully in the next year, I'll be doing a lot of outreach in regards to that as well.
Thank you.
And I will also say in the info sessions, we have Ryan Schlegel there, who is over city permitting. He is super, super helpful and just blows me away with his knowledge of the permitting process and required parameters if you are going to host an event on city property. So not necessarily like within the city limits. You can be on private property, your own property, to host your event. Can follow whatever rules you want, but if you are on city property, there are permits and things like that required. And he just, yeah, he's a wizard when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
so,
he holds my hand through the process.
Yeah, he's really great. So if you have questions about that, come to one of those info sessions as well and can get connected with him. And he's super, super helpful. So
thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
It's a great program, so thank you. All right, so Megan, are you ready?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Before we get going, Landon, are you the host? We have one of our colleagues, Joey Alsop, is in the waiting room, it sounds like.
I'm not, but Jasmine will let somebody. Hey,
Oh,
Jasmine,
thanks,
can you
Jasmine.
are we good now?
Yes,
Yeah, it looks like he's joining.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much. My name is Megan Waters. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at UTA. And I have a couple of my colleagues here on the line too from our planning department. I'll let them introduce themselves. Joey, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, my name is Joseph Alsop. I'm a service planning supervisor with UTA, so I oversee the route development for our system, and glad to be here.
Thanks, Joey. And Alex Bain.
Hi, Alex Bain. I'm in long range and strategic planning group here at UTA, and we are working on a long range transit plan, and so we're here to give a little bit of an update on that. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. I just to give a little bit of background, we did also just want to come and say hi and introduce ourselves and let you know who we are as we find more ways to interact with the community and connect with our communities across our service area. And looking for any suggestions or ideas you have too, those are always welcome on how to best reach your communities with opportunities to engage with us if there are questions in your community. So please consider us a resource, and we really appreciate you having us at this meeting. So as Joey and Alex alluded to, we do have a couple of planning efforts that we want to get into and share with you a little bit. I know that this meeting only goes till 10, so we're going to plan to do like a brief overview of our 5-year service plan and our long-range transit plan. And then we do have some information on the Tech Link corridor study. I know, Landon, you mentioned that might be of interest, but really interested just to hear Q&A too. So we'll make sure to leave time for that. But yeah, anything else, Landon, before we dive into the 5-year service plan?
No, and if these guys want you to come out to their individual community councils, you guys are okay with that, yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you can I can leave my contact information here, and we can arrange that if that is a helpful thing
Great.
for you.
Thank you.
And we are always happy to share information for you to share. I know some of your community councils have newsletters, things like that. So we're happy to work with you on that. But yeah, so Joey, do you want me to pull up anything for the 5-year service plan, or do you have something you want to share?
I believe did Eric give you a presentation?
He might have sent it to me. Maybe we can pull up, maybe you can pull up the website just to start, and I'll see if I can find the presentation.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay, let's see. So, okay. So, yeah, our 5-year service plan, by legislative mandate, we have to create that and update it every 2 years. And this year, we're updating it. And as it pertains to Salt Lake, we have
Hey, Joey, sorry to interrupt you. I just put a link in the chat for
okay.
updated one. Sorry.
All right, so you have that presentation in the chat then?
Here, let me just I'll pull up the this year's website. And we can talk through, I think we'll focus for this purposes, there's changes across our service area from Brigham City all the way down to South Utah County. And but we will focus on Salt Lake City, but if there are questions about outside of the area, happy to answer those. Okay. So I'm just going to pop down to the guiding framework. Joey, does that work? Do you want to talk through some of the changes?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So with our 5-year service plan, we are focused on what we can do within the constraint of both funding resources as well as staffing resources. It hasn't historically been an issue for us with staffing. It's usually been the funding component, but kind of the tables have turned as a result of the pandemic and ongoing issues, economic issues. And so the constraint for our 5-year service plan right now is our ability to improve service based on how many operators we can hire. And right now we have a shortfall of operators at this point. And so the constraint on improvements going forward is not necessarily funding, but our ability to get operators to operate improved service. And so right now, as of right now, we just have August 2023 determined, and then everything else after 2023, we're working on phasing based on what our staffing projections are. But right now, as many of you may be aware, we have a BRT project being constructed up in Ogden. There's a certain level of commitment that we have with going forward with that project. And then this is for August 2023 of next year. And then we have plans for to add 15-minute service on tracks on Saturdays. And it would remain 30 minutes on Sundays. And then we've been in discussions with High Valley Transit to shift the operations of the PC SLC Connect over to them. After 2023, as it pertains to Salt Lake City, sorry, my phone keeps on connecting to my headphones. Second South is kind of a big priority for the region as well as locally. And so right now we have the Route 2 that operates every 15 minutes. But we currently have loads that are exceeding our capacity. And so one of the things that we would like to pursue is overlapping services on Second South. And it might be helpful, Megan, going down to the map portions of these.
Here, let me give you, I think I can give you control, maybe. Should we? Can you scroll now? Do you have control of my mouse?
I don't.
Oh.
I'll just rely on you. I'll just tell you when to go down. With this one, I'll just start with this. This is we have the routes 470 and the 455. Right now, the travel time from Ogden to Salt Lake on those routes is about 2.5 hours. And right now we're prioritizing splitting those routes and at some point creating some frequency more for the north, but then creating consistent frequency from Farmington south to Salt Lake. And this would be a predecessor service to the implementation of the Davis SLC connector, which is still being developed, but the plan with that is to have service from Farmington to Salt Lake and then up to the U and to Research Park. Then we could go to the next one. So with the Route 2, the concept with this is to create twice as many buses on the corridor with the 2A and the 2B. The 2A would be a clockwise service going around campus and down Second South. And then the 2B would go the opposite direction, counterclockwise. And so you would have 15-minute service in alternating directions. And then it would be timed as such that there would be 7.5-minute headways on average on Second South between Salt Lake Central and President Circle. And then the 220 would terminate at the U, and we would rely on a more convenient transfer between the 220 and those high frequency routes of 2A and 2B. So prior to COVID, the 205 was every 15 minutes, and part of our emergency reductions was to drop the headways down to 30 minutes. We recently, in August, we changed that service to be part of the redesign of the west side of Salt Lake City, Rose Park, Fair Park, Jordan Meadows, West Point area. And right now, I mean, we were planning on doing 15 minutes, but with the labor shortage that caused us to delay that. And so one of our priorities in the next couple of years is to get that back up to 15-minute service, and that would create additional 15-minute route over in the west side of Salt Lake, and in addition to what is currently there with the Route 1 that was implemented in August of this year. And then this is the remainder of the changes that we have for Salt Lake County. Not as pertinent to Salt Lake City, but because we are a system, there is a degree of integration that we like to incorporate. And these routes allow for us just to have that distributed network of connectivity. So with either a single transfer or in some occasions there's a dual transfer to get to a majority of the places throughout Salt Lake County. And so these are some of the changes. Some of them are a result of improving what was reduced as of COVID and our current labor shortage. And
So Joey, do you want to share kind of a little bit about the process, or do you want me to do that? Just kind of this, you know, it's updated every 2 years. What are some of the factors that you all look at to determine what goes into this plan?
right, yeah, of course. So it's a lot of the influential factors on how we come up with the design of service and is a lot of it's based on what we call propensity, which is the likelihood of people to. So we go and we look at the demographics, we look at the population density and the employment density, and the greater the density, the greater likelihood we are to have more people use it. And so that plays into the propensity, as well as low income minority populations that are commonly associated with those densities. So there's the demographic market component, there's the feedback component that we get from communities, stakeholders, customers. That's a data point. And then we're always looking at the productivity of the existing system and how it performs to date. And we look at if there's adjustments we need to make in one area to supplement better service in another area.
Joey, I think there's a question.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Yeah, I'm particularly interested in the Davis Salt Lake City connector. Our community council was in conversations with Hal Johnson, probably about a year ago now. And there was some question about what the preferred route was going to be, whether it would be on 3rd West or 4th West. And we weighed in on that. It'll have an impact on the industrial traffic that we currently suffer from on 3rd West if it were on 3rd West. So I'm very interested in the status of that project right now, if the route has been decided, and when you're thinking that might actually go into service.
So My understanding is the locally preferred alternative was identified as being Fourth West. Thank you, Megan, putting in there. And that was in conjunction with the coordination with the technical team and the I think the RDA was part of that discussion. So as of right now, my understanding is that that is the locally preferred alternative that's being submitted as the final final draft for the going forward.
I would say, David, though, check out, so there's minimal information on that link I shared, but there has been some changes to the scope of the project in terms of the dedicated lane. That's no longer part of the preferred alternative they're working on. I think there's been some revisions likely since you have talked to Hal. But I know that project is moving rather slowly, and there's not an identified funding source.
Is there somewhere I can go to get the current information about it? I mean, I would have hoped that we would have been notified since we were involved in discussions with UTA.
Absolutely, yeah. Let me follow up on that and find out if there is a plan in Hal's queue to talk with the community council. Otherwise, I'll get I will just I was going to drop my contact information for you all anyway, but you can just shoot me an email or share your email directly with me, and I'm happy to follow up.
Okay. I hope that there'll be some opportunity for us to weigh in one more before the decision is actually cast in stone.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you.
As far as implementation, the service side of it, whether it's 30-minute headways, the alignment of the implementation of the alignment, not necessarily any capital components or improvements, is kind of on our vision list in our 5-year service plan. So if we have success with hiring more people to drive the buses, that's on the list to be phased into the plan. But as of right now, it's probably beyond our 2027 mark. So as of right now, it's just around 2027 and beyond.
David, do you want to ask your question?
Well, thank you guys very much.
Yeah, hi, folks. My name's David Lita. I'm on the board of the East Bench Community Council. Thanks very much for this presentation, first of all. Secondly, as you probably know, the East Bench district is probably the second hilliest residential district in the city, outside of probably the avenues. And the only bus service that appears to be available in this district is along Foothill Boulevard, which itself is pretty congested. So people living in this district, particularly at the higher levels of the district, like along Devonshire and the like, have to walk about a mile or more downhill to get to the bus, and then the same distance uphill from the bus stops to get home. My question on behalf of the council is, what, if anything, is in the planning for making bus service more accessible for folks that live in this district?
Now, is the district boundaries, is it from?
So roughly, Joe, roughly the district boundaries are Foothill Boulevard on the west, Sunnyside on the north, Harley's Canyon on the south, and the boundary of Salt Lake City on the east, which is basically the mountains.
So we we historically had service that was on like Wasatch Drive, and the outside of Foothill, it's not the greatest environment for us to have a 40-foot bus on. One thing that we could be looking at in the future is this concept of on-demand service like we have on the west side and even in Southwest Salt Lake County. And that's something that could be looked at as sponsored by Salt Lake City. But as far as taking a fixed route service, we did have service there about 15, 20 years ago. And we took it out, one, because the performance wasn't meeting our expectations or our standards. And then two, we got a lot of complaints that about the buses being on those residential roads. Now we've been doing ongoing studies on Foothill on improvements there. I know Salt Lake City and UTA have been trying to coordinate a concept report to figure out what it'll take. But as far as improvements beyond Foothill, that's not necessarily on our radar, but we can bring it up as a potential on-demand service area.
Yeah, it seems to me that on-demand service or some sort of small shuttle service on some sort of periodic basis would be the only viable solution for people that live in this area. And the concern is, as traffic on Foothill becomes increasingly congested, and as the access from Foothill to the East Bench becomes increasingly more limited, as the turning lanes are progressively being eliminated by UDOT. Note in particular the one that's going to be eliminated at Kensington and Foothill, as UDOT then puts in a no turning barrier at that intersection. It's becoming more and more isolated. I mean, this district is becoming more and more isolated. And so opportunities for people in this district to get out of their cars and use mass transit, use bikes, which of course is also a challenge because of the elevations, is something that is of a concern to the residents in this area. And so that's why I'm asking the question of you folks to see if you can put that. I'm sure it's on your watch list, but I just fear it's way down the watch list. And that won't help folks here in the near future. So that's why I'm bringing it up, just to sort of make sure it's not out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, and when we were looking at on-demand areas, this was an area that we were looking at. And but we'll monitor that and see if opportunities for that arise. And
one other suggestion, if I may. I know you are suffering with staffing crisis and lack of drivers for your buses, which has affected your service. Do you guys consider just raising your wages to attract more drivers? Can you get more people paid more money to drive for UTA? It seems like that might be a simple solution that would solve the problem.
Yeah. Go ahead, finish your thought, sorry.
No, I did finish. Thank you, Megan.
Yes, and there's a lot that goes into that, and I'll let Joey and Alex chime in too if they have other things to add. Our operators are part of the bargaining unit, and so anything that we do to change their working conditions does need to be negotiated. And so it's not a simple fix, but definitely compensation packages are being looked at, including working conditions. And our newer operators work what's called a split shift, so they're looking at changing some of those conditions where people can more work a predictable schedule, a straight schedule, and have the support they need from supervisors supervisor support as well. So we're looking at staffing up on those pieces. Before we go to Janet, Joey or Alex, do you want to chime in on the operator piece?
Yeah, I mean, if we weren't unionized, it would be, if our operators weren't unionized, it would probably be a pretty straightforward process where we could raise the wages, but because the wages are negotiated and the contract is on a 3-year cycle, it's essentially subject to that, what's been negotiated by the union. And fortunately, we're in a position this year where we're in the middle of negotiations. And so along with other considerations from both sides, it's just subject to finalizing the agreement between UTA and the union.
How many operators are you down? You guys
We're about 70 to 80 operators down across the system.
Wow.
And what's in our 5-year service plan, some of that's built into it, but for full implementation of our 5-year service plan, it'll require an additional 150 operators.
I would just add that being a bus operator is a challenging job. And so we are have been over time looking at ways to make it better, to make it so the shifts are more consistent, and that the working conditions are a big part of it. So we've been working to improve that. And I will say that this is not a UTA specific issue. This is a national issue where agencies all around the country, even pre-pandemic, we're struggling. And now that we have a very tight labor market, it's just very challenging. But in answer to some of the questions, we are looking at a whole variety of means, and compensation is one piece of it, and also doing what we can to make it a better work environment, especially for people who just start out, because there's a pretty high attrition rate. People start and then they decide that it's more difficult a job than they want to get into. So getting them so they can retain workers at the beginning of when they start their jobs. And I think there's a question from Janet here.
Thank you for that explanation.
Yeah, 2 quick questions. First one, and I'll just ask the first one and get an answer and then go to the second. Can we get ridership statistics from UTA, and who would we go to find those?
We actually have Megan beat me to it. Yes, there's a link in the chat there. We have our ridership data available online through an open data portal, and there's a whole lots of data about trends in ridership by mode and system-wide, as well as stop level data.
Great. Second question, on a news report last night, I guess I was a little surprised, but maybe you could elaborate. Some officials from UTA were being interviewed, and my understanding is only 16% of the money used to support UTA comes from riders.
The fare, a percentage of fare, is that what you're referring to? Like that when people board?
Riders support the budget of UTA. 16% of the UTA budget is supported by riders, and so the rest is from other sources.
Yes, that's fairly consistent among other than the largest agencies in the country. Most of the operating cost does not come from passenger revenue.
There is an open public comment period right now in our budget. I'll put a link in the chat. We've got a lot going on, but yes, that is a good observation. There was also, just if anyone's interested, there was a zero fare study recently done that's kind of ongoing and wrapping up, that was presented to the interim legislative transportation committee yesterday. Alex was there, but if that's of interest to anyone, there's lots going on.
Well, thank you for making it free to public school kids in Salt Lake City. It's a big deal.
It's a lot of kudos to Salt Lake City too, and Salt Lake City School District. So really cool partnership to see. And the
Yeah.
ridership is looking pretty good for them.
Great.
Yeah. So before we move into Alex's, I just kind of want to wrap up the 5-year service plan. This is something that we're going to be doing every 2 years. So the plan will be kind of continuously updated. Right now, we have an open high-level survey about communities' transit needs and priorities that I can send out to you all. We're hoping that we get some good information from communities to use for this iteration of the 5-year service plan, as well as our long-range planning efforts. And we will also have an upcoming official public comment period as our service planning team reviews and updates our draft network for that 5-year service plan. So what you saw today is sort of the first iteration. There's been some feedback from stakeholders, from communities, other considerations like workforce market, things like that that are going into our final updated draft plan that will be put out for public comment. So we can alert you all to that as well when that's available. I know in this operator conversation and talking about service reductions that we're having to put in place, it does feel kind of odd or confusing to be talking about both at the same time, but we feel it's really important to have a plan if and when we know where we want to go, if and when we can. But knowing that our labor market is really tight, we also want to say that all of this may not be possible. So keeping that in mind too, but this, if possible, if conditions allow, this is where we want to go. Joey, do you want to add anything on the 5-year service plan to wrap that up before we go into the long range plan pretty briefly?
No, I think that pretty well covers it. Those conditions of those constraints of funding and labor are, as Megan indicated, is our goal for implementation, and it can be accelerated or postponed based on a result of improvements or improvements in those conditions or not. I appreciate you involving us and having us share this information with you.
Thanks, Joey. Alex, do you want to dive in?
Sure, thanks. I've got a little bit of a presentation that I'll go through quickly and put a link to a site that we're working on updating. We're just getting started with this process. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Whoops. And all right, so yeah, so UTA is kicking off a long-range transit plan as well. Joey talked and Megan talked a little bit about our short-range plans, but we're also looking out 30 years. And so this, we have some existing processes that this fits in with. This is the first time that UTA is doing a 30-year plan across our whole agency. And this kind of complicated diagram just shows it's about how something starts from an idea to ending up being something you see on the street, right? So tracks planning happened a long time before it went into place, and the SLC Davis connector was many years in the coming. So, you know, the idea is that in the first phase, there's this lookout 30 years ahead. And for those of you familiar with the Wasatch Front Regional Council, or MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization, they develop a regional transportation plan that includes roads and big transit projects, right? And it starts in that phase and then eventually ends up at service planning where Joey and his team work on it, and then it becomes operationalized and becomes service on the street. The plans that are developed by WFRC, while they've been a great partner, we found that there's some gaps in that. I'll just kind of look at this graphic. The MPO has a big regional focus, so they're gonna look at the big fixed guideway, expensive capital projects, and they're about building the project. And what we're gonna look at in the LRTP is a lot of other things. You know, we talked briefly about the on-demand service. That would be something that's not a project, but it's service that we may need across our region over the next 30 years, additional bus service. There's lots of transit that's not a project. And so we're looking at all forms of public transit and all the support things that make it work in the future. Our goals here are really just building relationships with the community. So we're out talking to folks. We've done an extensive listening tour, and we'll have engagement throughout the process. And we want to look at the long-term transit need and develop a system-wide vision. We haven't really comprehensively and holistically looked across our whole service area, which extends from, you know, Box Elder County in the north and all the way down to Utah County and out to Tooele. And so what are all the needs looking out 30 years, and how can we develop a comprehensive community supported vision, and then really think about how we can get it done. And here's just a brief timeline. We've selected a consultant to assist us with this. It's Nelson Nygaard. They're well known for assisting agencies across the country with their long range transit planning processes. We're doing some community engagement, including a survey for both the 5-year service plan and the long range transit plan. And then we're going to develop a needs assessment, a draft plan, and we'll be going out next year to do a bigger phase of community engagement where we get some input on the concepts, and we're looking to finalize a plan next year, and that will be updated every 4 years. And with that, after that brief info, I think someone put a question in the chat, and I will stop.
Jana
sharing
asked
if I
about
can.
the community outreach and engagement process. So I can start by saying, I mentioned the survey that we're doing. We're doing a high level survey during this first phase. We will be rolling out some sorry, I'm just reading, kickoff meetings with stakeholders, with the community to describe the project, share what's happening. And then as we get a little farther along, next year, we will plan to be doing some additional community outreach events and opportunities for people to get more information, get involved in the process. So I don't have like a calendar of events yet, but we can definitely stay in touch about that, and I can get more specifics to you when that's available.
Sounds great. Anybody else have any questions?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Alex. Go ahead.
I was just gonna ask what you just did. So if anyone had questions. So.
Awesome. Thanks for reaching out to us, guys. We're happy to spread information. Thank you.
Absolutely. We really appreciate the connection. I know we have a lot of room to grow and improve, and some of our public engagement strategies that are sort of required do not always meet the needs, and we're very aware of that. One strategy that in specific kind of has come to the top, and I know that several people have pointed this out, is the requirement for us to post legal listings when there's an open public comment period, and we know that's just not reaching a large volume of folks. And so we're doing work to diversify our methods, and we really appreciate these connections, as it is super valuable to have you as community leaders connecting to your communities. So yes, community councils are a great source of community engagement and outreach. So I appreciate this is kind of why we're here. I was exploring ways to get in touch better with community councils in a sustainable way. And so we appreciate the invitation to be here. And if there are opportunities with your individual community councils that make sense, that would be helpful. We're happy to support there as well. Did you have specific questions? I don't know a lot about TechLink, but did you have specific questions about TechLink?
No, someone just mentioned it. I don't know
Okay.
anything about it, honestly.
I
Okay.
could, yeah,
Nigel,
if
do
anyone
you?
has any specific questions, I might be able to give you some brief overview.
Nigel, do you know anything about it?
I could, if you'd like, I can just give a little bit
Sure.
of background. So there's a
That's
number of things that have been going on. UTA did a study looking at light rail that's been going on for the last couple of years. It's wrapping up. There's also a, as you're probably aware, a significant amount of investment and consideration of the Granary District and a circulation plan that Salt Lake City is getting ready to kick off. And the Tech Link study, which was a grant including Salt Lake City, UTA, and the University of Utah, that looked at sort of connections between the University of Utah, Research Park, and downtown Salt Lake City. And so some things that are being looked at and will be continued to be looked at through the Tech Link study are engaging what's called the ballpark spur, or the American spur, that starts from the ballpark track station and heads west up to 400 West, and then up through the Granary District. And then potentially the idea of extending tracks from Main Street west along 400 South to Salt Lake Central and what's known as the Depot District in the Granary District. And then there's a potential for some form of transit extension, which could be light rail or something else, between the University of Utah and the Research Park redevelopment. And so the Tech Link study is going to look at all of those things. That's something that we looked at in our future light rail study as well. But yeah, there's more going on with that. And Megan, yes, put some additional information about the study timing. So.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any last questions for these guys?
Folks asked about the presentations, and Megan and I will follow up when we have a presentation to go with both the 5-year service plan and the long-range transit plan that we can send out to this whole group.
Great, and someone just asked what changes do you have planned for the 209 on the avenues?
Joey, do you have a response for that?
Right now, I don't think there's any anticipated changes. Usually we evaluate the service based on a 2-year time period and seeing, because that's typically how long it takes for the maturation and development of the market to take place.
And Gwen, we know there's been a lot of resident comments about the 209, and those are all on record. Those will be considered as part of the next 5-year service planning process, as Joey alluded to. We don't like to make changes like in rapid succession because it doesn't give the route a good opportunity to see. It was put in place for a reason. The ridership is actually looking pretty good. I did share a link to the open data portal if you want to check out the 209 stats.
Great, thank you guys. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Hey, Judy, do you have anything for the Planning Commission?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, well, that's uncommon.
I know, it's mostly because I'm sort of out of it this week.
Well, thanks everybody.
They're always up to mischief.
Thanks for everybody coming, and then we'll see you guys in January. And as usual, if you want to reach out for topics, please do. We're happy to invite whoever you guys would like to hear from. So thank you.
Happy New Year.
Thanks for coming, Ashley.
You're welcome. Bye.